Hi, today I'm going to show you how to open up and disconnect so you can remove a music and sound model MC602 Radio Intercom Master Station. To do this, you're going to need a few basic things. You're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. You're going to need a regular plain flat screwdriver. You're going to need some sort of tape that you can write on. This is blue masking tape. And you're going to need something to write on the tape with. For me, I like to use Sharpie pens. I've got a thick red one, a fine red one, and a black one. Color's your choice. What you want to write on with, that's your choice too. Doesn't matter to me. The very first thing you have to do before you do anything else to remove this is you absolutely positively have to turn the circuit breaker off that powers the system. And we'll get to why that's important, but that's what you have to do right now. Before you do anything else is go to your circuit breaker panel, figure out which circuit breaker circuit this is connected to, and turn it off so the display is dark, just like this one here. No clock, no numbers, nothing showing. That means it's shut off. The first step is to unscrew the MC602 Master Station from the wall. If you look carefully on the faceplate here, you don't see any screws. And if you open the door here on the bottom, it folds down. No screws there either. So what's the deal with that? What's up? Where's the screws? Wow, the screws are hidden. They're behind this faceplate piece here. So this has to be removed, and it's relatively easy to do. You sort of grab it on both sides with your finger and you sort of wiggle it forward, and it will, if you're a little lucky, pop off, just like this one did. Now, this is held in place with these 5 little black plastic keepers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes when you pull this off, these will come out and they'll be stuck in their little openings in the front of the faceplate like that. If that happens to yours, don't panic, because all you have to do is take your flat screwdriver and carefully wedge it out. It'll come out relatively easily. And then, after you pick it up off the floor, see, this is a real life demonstration. This is how it actually is going to go when you do it. When you pick it up off the floor, you take the serrated end, not the round end with the ball on it, and you put it back in its little socket right here where it came out of. Now you put the faceplate aside because you don't want it to get damaged, so put it in a safe place. Once you've removed the faceplate, you can now see the 2 screws. There's one here on the right hand side, and there's another one here on the left hand side. Before we unscrew these with your Phillips screwdriver, I'm going to warn you. The way these sets are designed, when you take these screws out and the set is loose from the wall housing, which is the metal box in the wall behind it, there is virtually nothing holding it in place. There are no hinges, there are no brackets, there isn't anything that really holds it up there. So as you take the screws out, you have to be ready to catch it in case it wants to fall on the floor, which I don't recommend. Now, when you take the screws out, please use a standard Phillips screwdriver. Please do not feel tempted to go out to the garage and get your cordless drill out, because it's completely unnecessary and you run the risk of damaging something. Once you've backed out the screws, take the screws out, put them down on the table, and then the set will come loose and fold out from the wall just like this one did. And as you can see, it's all just flopping around here. There's nothing really to hold it up onto the wall except all the wires that are connected to it, and we certainly don't want to dangle it off the wires. On all music and sound intercoms, including this one, there is this long green wire. It's attached to one side of the set over here on the left, and the other end's over here on the right. And this is the support strap. On the top of the wall housing, this metal box is the wall housing. Up here on the top of the wall housing is a little hook. And what you're supposed to do is take the green wire and you fish it into the slot of the hook, and that's supposed to help hang it on the wall like that. Not the world's greatest design, but that's what they did, so that's what you have to deal with. One thing that you can do, if you don't want the set rubbing up against the painted wall like this, or if you have wallpaper or paneling or something like that, is you can take a cloth. This is just a shop rag that I have here, and you can pull the bottom away from the wall a little bit, and you can put it behind the edge of the faceplate, kind of like that, or long ways if that works better for your installation. This part is sort of like whatever works the best, and that will help keep it from rubbing up on the wall and making marks on it. Another thing you can do, which works out well for some people, is instead of hanging on an angle on the wall like this, you can lift it up somewhat so it's flat and then pull it to the right and catch this corner down here, the bottom left-hand corner, inside the corner of the wall housing right here. So it sort of sits in there and it sort of pushes to the left when you do that, and that helps keep it flat, and that'll make it easier for you to work on. This is awkward, but it is what it is. So let's review a little bit before we actually start unhooking things, because that will make this easier for you. These types of systems, the way the wires are terminated, which means how they're connected to the back of the set, is again somewhat awkward. So let me walk you through where the connection points are and then explain to you one by one why it's awkward. Down here you have a row of screws. There are 10 screws all together, and connected to each screw will be one green wire from each of the remote speakers that you have on your system. These connections are for inside and patio speakers, not for your front door station. Here we have a binding post, and on the board down below it, it says white. And guess what? That's where all the white wires go. Over here, we have another binding post, and on the board down below it, it says black, and that's where the black wires go. Over here, we have another binding post, and on the board it says red, and as you would expect, all the red wires are there. And this, the last binding post here, on the board below it, it says shield, and it has some bare wires in it. And we'll talk about this in more detail when it comes time to disconnect that, which will be pretty soon. There are other connections back down in here that you can't really see yet, and we'll get to those as we move some of this jumble of wires out of the way. Over here is this big white connector right here. This has a multiple number of wires that go into it. There are 2 red, 2 black, and a green, and it's plugged into a socket on this end, which comes from the transformer, which has different colors of wires, including blue, red, yellow, green, and black. We're going to actually disconnect this in a second. This box right here, in the left-hand end of the set, this is the tuner, and this is where the antennas are connected. And again, it's hard to see that right now, but we'll get to that shortly. Here in this close-up view, here is our transformer power connection that we talked about just a second ago. And this end of it goes down to the transformer, which is in the bottom of the wall housing down there, which you'll see at the end. And then this cable is what connects it to the master station. So this has to be unplugged. But before you unplug it, you have to turn the power off, which is why I had you do that in the beginning of the video, because now it's safe to disconnect this. If the power was left on, it would be considered unsafe to disconnect it. And that's because in music and sound transformers, which are down there in the wall that you'll see towards the end of the video, inside the transformer is a fuse. The fuse is there to protect the transformer, and because of the way it's designed, sometimes when you unplug this, if the power is turned on, or plug it back together when the power is turned back on, you run the risk of blowing the fuse. And if you blow the fuse, then you have to take the transformer out altogether, which is a lot to do for people, and then you have to send it to me so I can open up the transformer and put a new fuse in it. So that's a lot of time, trouble, and effort compared to walking over to your circuit breaker panel and flipping the breaker off. So with the circuit breaker turned off, so there's no power to the system, you can now grab each end of the connector and pull them apart, and it unplugs. You can take this end from the transformer and tuck it down out of the way for right now, and this end that's connected to the master station, you can just sort of flop out of the way because it's not going to hurt anything, and it gets it out of the view so you can see other things. Once we've done that, let's start disconnecting the wires from our remote speakers. Earlier in the video, we talked about these 3 binding posts. We have the black one here, the red one here, and this one which says shield. Now, MC602s could be installed with a variety of different types of music and sound wire depending on when they were installed. In this installation, we have a mixture of wires. We have some wires that would be from an earlier music and sound intercom system, and then we have a wire from the newest style of wire when the MC602 was brand new. The newer style wire that Music and Sound made had inside the cable a ground shield wire, which is what these bare wires are right here. When you have Music and Sound wire with a shield in it, the bare wires within the cable get connected to this big standoff right here. And to release these, all you have to do is use your flat screwdriver, loosen the screw a little bit, take the tension off the wire and take it out of the connector like that. That's all you have to do. Once you've removed the shield wire from the standoff, it's best to take your screwdriver and tighten the screw down just a little bit so it doesn't wobble and fall out. Because if you lose this, then there's no way to reconnect the wire later on. Once you've gotten the shield wires out, you can sort of bend them out of the way. And now we're going to move on and do the red, and then we're going to do the black. Since this system has a total of 5 stations, there are 5 red wires. There are 4 black wires, but then there's another black wire that makes up the 5th one here. And we'll talk about that when we deal with the black. Because of the way these are designed, with 5 red wires in one standoff, this tends to become a little unwieldy sometimes. So what we're going to do, because we don't want wires to go astray, we want to keep the wires together, because you have to remember that later on, when you get your system back after it's been fixed or after you've painted the wall or whatever it is you're doing, you're going to need to put all this back together. So let's go ahead and remove our red wires. We're going to loosen the screw in the standoff. And then we're going to take the wires out of the connector. And in this case, this is pretty typical of what you find. They're very loosely twisted together. Not very much. As you can see, the bundle just sort of wants to fall apart here, which is fine, although I would do it a little neater than that. But what you want to do is, once you've taken it out of the big standoff, first thing I would do is sort of twist the bare ends together a little bit so you have a neater bundle. And then, using a piece of your masking tape, wrap the masking tape around the red part of the wire down here. And that holds them all together. Now, if you want to, you certainly can take your marker and you can write red on the blue tape. But it, to me, seems kind of obvious. You have red wires and a standoff that says red, and that's where they go. But you do it the way that makes the most sense to you. In some installations, depending on what they did, you may not have red wires here. They may have used some generic wire that has different colors all together. And in those cases, you definitely want to label this as the red bundle, because you need to remember it goes back under the red standoff. Once you've prepped your red bundle with the tape and have it all disconnected, simply bend it out of the way so you have a clear view of what we're going to do next. Now we're going to disconnect the black wires from the big standoff, and also down here you can see, especially if I move these out of the way a little bit, here we have a single screw, and printed on the board next to the screw it says patio black. So the way Music and Sound systems are designed, they have a dedicated connection for outdoor patio stations. And in this case, this system has one patio station in the backyard. What you're supposed to do is take the black wire from the patio speaker cable and connect it to the patio black terminal, which is the one that's here. And then all of the other black wires, there will be 4 of them, get connected to the big standoff that says black. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the wires from the big standoff first, and then we'll do the patio one. So it's just like the red bundle. We're going to loosen the screw. We're going to take the wires out of the standoff, and there are 4. And again, see, it's kind of a loose bunch here. It's not really tight together. So we're going to straighten them out a little bit, and we're going to twist them together just a little bit to hold them in place. And then we're going to wrap our blue tape around it to secure them as a bundle. See, now they don't come loose, they don't fall apart, it stays right there. Again, label it if you need to. Now we have to do this one. This is black patio, and there's only a single wire because there's only one patio station on this installation. So we're going to loosen the screw. We're going to take the wire out from under the screw, and we're going to put a piece of tape on it, but instead of wrapping it around and around and around, I'm just going to fold it over like a flag, like that, and then I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to write patio. So you'll remember, patio has an O. So you'll remember. And then we can tuck that one out of the way. Oh, we forgot to do something. We didn't retighten the screw on our big black standoff. And we should also tighten the screw where it says patio black. And we forgot to tighten the screw on our big red standoff. It's important to snug these down, because if you're going to be shipping this and the box gets thrown around during shipping and everything jiggles and vibrates and everything, you'd be surprised how easily these screws will wind themselves out of the connectors and get lost inside the box somewhere. So definitely want to snug them down. For those of you who are wondering, yes, we're about halfway done. Now we're going to take out the white wires out of the big white standoff. And here's the white standoff, it has white on the board, and here are 5 white wires that go into it. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to loosen the screw. We're going to remove the 5 white wires from the standoff. Again, they're all loose, so we'll straighten them out a little bit. We'll twist them together a little bit, and we'll take our tape and wrap it around the white part of the wire to make a bundle, just like that. And now we can put those out of the way. What we have left to disconnect is we have the green wires on the screws on the terminal board on the right hand side of the set. If you look carefully, you'll see that there are numbers printed on the board underneath each screw. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this last one, it says patio. Remember we had our black patio wire? Well, this is our green patio wire, and it corresponds with the switch on the front of the unit for the patio station. These wires all need to be identified as to where they go, when you reconnect it, you get them back in the right order, and it's easiest to do the patio one first. And the way I like to do this is take it out from under the clamp connector, and we're going to do the same thing that we did with the black patio wire, which is we're going to put a piece of tape on it and make a flag like that. And again, we're going to mark on it patio. So you'll remember. And we'll put that out of the way. We have 4 more green wires to disconnect. And let's see if we can move these around a little bit so it's a little easier for you to see. So there's a green wire connected to number 1, a green wire connected to number 2, a green wire connected to number 3, and a green wire connected to number 4. These connections correspond with the switches behind the door on the front of the unit. Switch number 1 is connection number 1, switch number 2 is connection number 2, and so forth and so on. When you disconnect these, you'll want to put these back in the same order, because this regulates the order of rooms in your house. It could be that number 1 is master bedroom, number 2 is master bathroom, number 3 is guest bedroom, and number 4 is the laundry room. So you want to put these back in the same order. An easy way to do this, you can do the thing with the blue tape and put a flag on each wire and write the number that it belongs to. Or you can do it a different way, which is the way I like to do it, which is I'm going to just mark the wires. We're going to start with number 4 and work left, because that way we're not working in front of everything. And we'll loosen the screw, remove the wire from under the connector, and I'm going to take my black Sharpie, and since that was number 4, I'm going to put 4 little black marks on the wire. See the 4 little black marks? That tells me that when I go back to put this back in, that green wire goes on screw number 4. Now we're going to do the next one. Take the wire out from under the connector, take the black Sharpie, and we're going to guess how many lines we're going to make. We're going to make 3. Like that. This is the way that I'm used to doing this. If this doesn't work for you, then what you can do do number 2 here. And yes, you have to do these as you go. You don't just connect them all and try to remember what order they were in. You got to mark them as you go. So there's number 2. Now, if this method doesn't really work for you very well, what you can simply do is remove the wire from underneath the connector. Again, use a little piece of blue tape. Make a flag on the wire like this, and simply put a 1 on it because it's number 1. Briefly, in this wide shot, I wanted to show you what happens as you disconnect wires. As you can see, the set now appears as if it's falling off the wall because it basically is. It's still being held in place by the green support wire that we hooked on at the beginning of the video, but when we first started, before we disconnected all the wires, it was pretty much lying like this. But as you disconnect the wires and the tension is removed because the wires are helping support it, it gradually wants to fall down like this. Again, not my favorite design. Sometimes you may want to have a helper and they can just stand there and help hold it up for you, and that might make it easier because this doesn't really take very long to do. So we're almost done. Here in the center of the set, and we'll move some of these wires out of the way, there are 2 more things to disconnect. There's this white connector right here that has 4 wires that come out of it. There's a red wire, a black wire, an orange wire, and a white wire. And those are the wires that come from the Chime module. The Chime module is a circuit board that's in the back of the wall housing, which I'll show you towards the end. All you have to do to disconnect this is carefully grab the wires, wiggle the connector a little bit, and it simply unplugs. If you look on the board right here, you can see it was plugged into a red socket that has 4 pins, 1 pin for each wire. And down here, printed on the board below the red socket, it says Chime. So that's how you know where it goes. Up here, we have 2 screws that have a black and a red wire on them. And down below those screws, it says door. And those are the wires that come from the door speaker outside on your front porch. So now we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to loosen the screws, and we're going to remove the wires from underneath them like this. Now, it's a good idea because we're starting to have a lot of loose wires inside the wall housing to, again, take a piece of blue tape, make a flag, and label it as door. Like that. And that way you'll remember where they go. So we're almost done. We only really have 2 more things to disconnect, and that's going to be right over here. Here we have the large rectangular metal box, has a label on it, says model MC602. This is the AM/FM tuner, and here are the connections for the antennas. The orange wire on the left-hand end is the AM antenna wire, and it's connected to the screw that says AM antenna, which is printed on the board underneath the screw. So all we have to do is loosen the screw a little bit and remove the orange wire from underneath the screw. Now, you can label this if you want to. That's what I would recommend. Again, use your blue tape, make a flag, write on it AM or something like that that makes sense to you, so you remember where it goes. Next, we have to disconnect the FM antenna. The FM antenna are these 2 connections on the right-hand end, and there's 1 wire under each screw. And again, we're going to loosen these, and we're going to remove the wires from under the screws. When it comes time to reconnect these, you reconnect them ideally in the way that they were connected in the first place. Good way to do this, to remember that's easy, is this is where your red Sharpie comes into play. You take your red Sharpie and you can put a little bit of red on this screw, and then you put a little bit of red on this lead of the antenna, so when you go to reconnect it, you know red goes to red. See how simple that is? After we've disconnected the AM and FM antenna, those are the last 2 wires that we have to disconnect from the back of the master station. So now we can lift it up off its green support wire and take it away and get it out of our way. So I'm going to hold it up like this, take the weight off of it. I'm going to unhook the green wire from the hook in the top of the wall housing, and we're going to carefully maneuver the green wire out of the tangle of all of the wires that the installer put in when he put the system in new. And the installer in this case was not very well organized, because they're all kind of wrapped around on each other, which is a real pain in the neck. You might be wondering why in this example installation that I made up just for you to see, how come the wires are in such a tangle. The reason I made it this way is this is pretty much what you can expect when you open up your MC602 to disconnect all the wires. Installers are not always terribly neat and organized, especially in an installation like this where you have lots of wires that are all bundled together. Things get into a jumble and you end up with this rat's nest. And here what we have is a situation where the green support wire goes through some of the bundle of red wires and then goes through some of the bundle of white wires, and you can't just undo this. What people have a tendency to want to do at this point is they get frustrated and they've been working on this for a while, and they'll take a pair of wire cutters and they'll cut the green support wire. Don't do that. So what you're going to do is you have two choices. You can undo the white bundle and the red bundle, which means unwrapping the blue tape, separating the wires, sorting them out around the green support wire, and then putting it all back together, which is a lot of work. Or you can do something much easier. Remember in the beginning of the video when we talked about the green support wire, I told you it was connected down here on the bottom right hand corner and up here on the top left hand corner? Well, it's just held on with little screws. So if you take your Phillips screwdriver and you unscrew the screw, this end comes loose like that. You can unweave it through the bundle of red and white wires like that. And then what you should do immediately is put it back. Don't think, oh, I'll put it back later on when I get the thing back. No, put it back right now. Now, you didn't have to mess up with your bundles of wires up here, and you got the green support strap out of the tangle, and it's all done. This is removed. Well, almost. So here's our uninstalled Music and Sound MC602, and it looks like it's lost some teeth, but they're not really teeth, they're just button caps like this. The button caps on an MC602, as you can see, are very wobbly. And with all of the turning and twisting and undoing and moving it around and sliding down on the wall and all of those good things, 3 of them just came loose. It's not a big deal because they just simply fit over the ends of the stems of the little blue switches right there, like that, and like that. And finally, like that. Now it's got all its teeth back. The last thing you have to do, because you're probably going to have to ship this somewhere, maybe to me, is you don't want to ship it like this because these are going to fall off, and also this circuit board that's behind it is all exposed and everything, and we want to protect it because we don't want it to get broken. So we're going to take our faceplate that we took off in the very beginning and we're going to put it back on. This can be a little tricky because these tend to wobble around and they all have to fit through their appropriate slots in the faceplate. So what you do is you carefully kind of line it up, and this is one of those let's see how good you can be things. And if you get it just right, you can get them all to just pop right through. And if you can't, then you use your screwdriver and you kind of move them around a little bit and you snap it back on. See, I made it look really easy. Why? Because I've done it like 1,000,000 times. You haven't done it 1,000,000 times, so it'd be more challenging for you, but just stay calm, jiggle the buttons around until they all line up, pop the faceplate back on, and now this is ready to go. Now I know at this point you're thinking, oh no, what's next? Well, you've got 2 more things to do, maybe 3. They're all easy though, so don't worry about it. Remember we were talking about when we did unplug the white connector with the 4 wires for the chime? Well, this comes from the chime module. The chime module is this board up here in the top left-hand corner of the wall housing. Most of the time, it's a really good idea if you're sending your master station in for repair to send the chime module with it because they work together. Chime modules sometimes have problems, and if you're going to send stuff, might as well send it all. It's not terribly difficult to remove. You have this mess of wires here, which we're just going to carefully sort of bend out of the way. The chime module is held to the back of the wall housing with these little snappy plastic holder things. And that's a technical term for them. And what you have to do to remove it is you sort of reach in there with your fingers and put them behind the chime module a little bit, and you wiggle and you pull it forward and it comes out. Just like that. See, that was easy. Different chime modules, there are 2 different kinds. This is a 3-note chime module. Sometimes you'll have an 8-note chime module. It doesn't really matter, but you have to disconnect usually the orange and yellow wire from the 2 screws. One wire will be connected to the screw that says common, and most typically, like in this installation, the orange wire is connected to the screw that says 3 notes. You have to mark where these go, and this is another good opportunity to use your red Sharpie, and you can color the screws with a little bit of red to remind you of where they went, and you can also put red on the 2 wires. You can also use your blue tape, put a flag on the 2 wires, and write chime. Now, to disconnect these, you just loosen the screws and the wires come off. When it comes time to reinstall this, it does not matter which way you put the wires on. Yellow could be on common, yellow could be on 3. Doesn't matter. As long as one wire is on 3 and one wire is on common, you're good to go. So now this is out, and we have just 2 more really simple things to do. Way back in the beginning of the video, the very first thing I told you to do was what? It was turn the circuit breaker off to shut the power off to the intercom. We did that because we talked about the fuse that's inside the transformer, which is down under this plate, and this is the connector that we unplugged from the connector that comes off the back of the MC602 Master Station. Now that the Master Station has been fully uninstalled, you need to turn the circuit breaker back on, because odds are this is in your kitchen and it's on the same circuit as your toaster oven, coffee pot, and those sort of things, and you'll need to use those. You can just simply turn it back on and leave this tucked in here like this, and that's fine. Some people worry about that because there's connections and wires and all that. So what you can do if you're worried about that is take a piece of blue tape, put it over the connector like this, wrap it over the end to cover it up. Now turn your circuit breaker on so tomorrow morning you can have a bagel and coffee. All right, I promise this is the very last thing. The very last thing you're going to do is you're going to take the 2 screws that we took out of the faceplate that held it to the wall. We're going to screw them back into the bracket that comes off the wall housing like this. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because if you don't, these will get lost. Perhaps you're a super organized person and you won't lose them. But I don't meet that many super organized people. The other thing you can do if you are semi-organized is you can take a little plastic bag. I have these that I use here, or a Ziploc or something like that. Put the screws in the Ziploc, and then on the outside of the Ziploc, write screws. Because if you put them in a bag and you write on the bag what they're for, the odds of this getting thrown away are very low. Then you can take it and you can sort of roll it up like this, and you can put it here in the wall housing with all the wires, so when you get your set back, you'll know where the screws are. And I promise, see, that was the very last thing to do. That's how you open up, disconnect, and uninstall a music and sound MC602 Master Station. I hope you found this interesting, and maybe for someone it will be helpful. If it is, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that helps us just a little bit. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.